Nicholas, I'm Ellie. So Art Fight is in less than a week, and this will be my first year participating. How exciting! For the occasion, I decided to make a video going over all my characters that I currently have up on the site, in case you were looking for characters to attack, or you were just curious about my OCs. Plus, I'll take any opportunity to yap about my babies. If you're also participating in Art Fight, feel free to drop your users or character IDs in the comments so that I or other viewers can potentially attack you. No guarantees, of course. Feel free to yap as much as you want as well. I love hearing about other people's stories. To get on with the video, this is my Art Fight profile. It'll be linked in the description. I'm on Team Comedy because if you know anything about me, it will be that I love clowns. As you can see, I have two different worlds or stories that my characters come from, as well as myself and all my pets. These two stories aren't all of my OCs, but they're the only ones I've worked on recently and thus have recent art for. The first and more developed of the two is, working title, My Roommate is a Demon. This story is what I would describe as half contemporary Gothic and half character drama, inspired both by the tropes of Gothic tragedies like Wuthering Heights or The Monk, as well as modern character dramas like Sex Education. Death Note was also a big tonal inspiration. The story is very different, but I was inspired by the idea of a chaotic neutral demon that only the protagonist can see, as well as the idea of a good or neutral protagonist that slowly corrupts and becomes the villain, which is also prevalent in Gothic tragedies. My Roommate is a Demon is told in two parts, the first in 2017 and the second 10 years later in 2027. It's set in Australia and follows the story of Mikayla Byrne, a 17-year-old high school student who lives a relatively normal life until she meets an ancient demon that only she can see. Mikayla is hot-headed, impulsive, and somewhat introverted. She has had a difficult upbringing, which has led to her becoming aggressive and defensive, often starting fights or breaking things as she struggles to process her emotions in other ways. Mikayla lives with her half-brother and his dad. She's never met her father and has, to put it lightly, a strained relationship with her mother. She's very artistic and enjoys drawing and listening to music. Having just started year 12, she plans to get a tattooing apprenticeship and drop out, as she's never really enjoyed school much. As well as her artistic interests, she's also quite fit, enjoying boxing, cycling, and working out. She was taught to box by her brother, who has always encouraged her to stand up for herself, even if it has resulted in her getting into fights often. While she's strong and a competent fighter, her impulsiveness often gets her in trouble, as she doesn't usually think things through, instead allowing pure emotion to lead her decisions. With the introduction of the titular demon, Mikayla's life becomes a whole lot harder. Going by Phoebe, because her real name is too difficult to pronounce, the demon is a runaway, connecting herself to Mikayla so that she doesn't have to start Armageddon. Since the only way for Phoebe to return to the underworld is for Mikayla to die, she becomes the target of other demons, who use dangerous people, including Mikayla's biological father, to hunt her down. After narrowly escaping two near-death experiences in which her loved ones were put in danger, Mikayla chooses to fake her own death and run away. She doesn't see her friends again until part 2 of the story, 10 years later. Mikayla's half-brother Morgan is unfortunately blamed for her death, and while there's never enough evidence to charge him, since he's completely innocent, the accusations, combined with the grief of losing his sister, basically ruins his life. Morgan Byrne is Mikayla's older brother by 7 years, making him 24 in part 1 and 34 in part 2. He's a cheery and friendly guy. Despite having the same, if not more trauma than Mikayla, he doesn't let it surface until part 2, always putting on a happy mask to be there for his sister. As a child, he was forced to mature faster than he should have, due to him wanting to look after Mikayla and protect her from their mother's unpredictable behaviour. He loves his sister more than anything, but does have some complex feelings and resentment towards her due to how much he sacrificed and the fact that she reminds him of their mother in a lot of ways. While their relationship remains strong, those unaddressed traumas do cause occasional friction between them. Morgan has a burn scar on the left side of his face that he got as a child. I won't go into the details as I want to keep this video light if I can, but I've put a link to a Google Doc with the full story in the description if you're curious. Just please read with caution. There are trigger warnings at the start of the document. As the scar is associated with a lot of trauma and he's insecure about it, he usually covers it with his hair and can get a bit cagey if someone brings it up. In terms of interests, Morgan is like a combination of a bro, a nerd, and a mum. He likes working out and boxing, as well as video games and tabletop roleplay. He also loves to cook and is a very naturally caring and nurturing person. Also, side note, this doesn't really come across because I'm not that good at drawing men, but he's canonically supposed to be very attractive. Probably the most attractive character, so if there's anyone watching who is good at drawing hot guys, well, maybe consider attacking him. Thank you. After Mikayla's disappearance, the grief and the harassment from police, press, and the general public completely changes Morgan. He is the only person that doesn't believe Mikayla is dead, and in the 10 years between the two parts, he spends all of his time either looking for her or wallowing in self-pity. One of the only people to not believe he's guilty is Mikayla's best friend Finn, who had known him since they were a child and becomes his primary support, looking after him both as a repayment for all he's done for both Finn and Mikayla, and as a way to distract themselves from their own grief. Finn Leal, hopefully I pronounced that right, is Mikayla's best friend. The two of them met in their first week of kindergarten when they were 4 years old. They were both outcasts, Mikayla due to her hot-headed, aggressive behaviour, and Finn due to their quiet bluntness. Finn is the calm that balances out Mikayla's storm, and the two have been inseparable since childhood. As Finn is an only child and doesn't have any father figure, they also connected to Morgan very quickly, seeing him as the cool older brother they never had. Morgan quickly became a trusted figure, and Finn went to him with everything they couldn't go to their mother about. Finn is a very chill person with a monotonous, blunt demeanour. They only talk when necessary and prefer a quiet shared activity over a gab session. They like skateboarding, reading, and exploring both natural and urban environments. They also collect sneakers. Finn and Mikayla are platonic soulmates, and they are each other's first person to go to with any problem or secret. Finn was the first person Mikayla told about the demon, and while they don't really believe her, assuming that she's experiencing some kind of psychosis, they take her at her word and are supportive. After the time skip, Finn is working as a paralegal and caring for Morgan in their spare time. They are extremely overworked, but they don't like having nothing to do as it forces them to be alone with their thoughts. They have no social life and have lost connection with their other friends. Their relationship with Morgan has become kinda toxic, as he is very dependent on them and tries to use them as a replacement sister. Finn and Mikayla are each other's only friends until high school, when they meet Amelia, or Millie, Mikayla's love interest and one of my favourite characters to draw. Amelia Hart, who usually goes by Millie, met Mikayla and Finn during their first year of high school, when they were all 12 years old. Millie saw Mikayla beating up a bully and immediately caught feelings. Despite being a very confident and naturally flirty person, Millie found Mikayla too intimidating to flirt with, so instead decided to become her friend, accepting that the feelings would just always be unrequited. Millie quickly became friends with both Finn and Mikayla, turning the duo into a trio. Millie, however, is much more sociable and extroverted than either of the others, so being friends with her enriched their social life as a whole. Millie is bubbly, flirty, popular, and sometimes a little too loud and friendly. She's the life of the party and tends to organise most social events. She loves fashion, makeup, and musical theatre, and dreams of working in show business one day, preferably as a makeup artist. Unlike the other characters, Millie has pretty much zero trauma before the events of the story, having had a very comfortable home life. This does cause some disagreements between her and Mikayla, but overall her positive sunshine demeanour definitely wins her over more than it gets on her nerves. While Mikayla caught feelings for Millie long before the events of the story, when she was around 15 or 16, she doesn't confess as she feels like she's unlovable, and she isn't good with emotions. They finally share their first kiss during a near-death experience halfway through part 1, becoming an official couple soon thereafter. When Mikayla fakes her death, Millie believes the rumours about Morgan being responsible, refusing to accept the possibility that Mikayla would leave without saying goodbye. This causes friction between her and Finn, resulting in fighting and eventually an end to their friendship. After the time skip in part 2, Millie, who is now engaged and working as a freelance makeup artist, is the one to find Mikayla and force her to come back and right her wrongs, kicking off part 2, which I haven't written a lot of yet. That's all the MRD characters I have in my art fight, but there are several more that only exist as sketches, like Jonah, Shane, Phoebe, Luke, and Lucy, and several more that don't exist at all outside of my brain. Hey, maybe I'll have them ready for next year, but for now I'm happy with these 4. They're my favourite, and probably the most important characters, outside of Phoebe, who I really need to get around to finalising the design of. Moving on to the second story, this one is much newer and less developed, but I probably love it just as much. This one is also gothic, to the extent that it's about vampires and the main character dresses in a gothic style, but it's more of a horror comedy, which I hope to make very campy, despite also having quite dark themes. I was inspired by films like What We Do in the Shadows, Beetlejuice, Buffy, and Little Shop of Horrors, if that gives you any indication of the tone here. The working title is How to Be a Vampire. Set in 2010 suburban USA, this story follows a 400-year-old gothic vampire and a Twilight-obsessed teenager. Cecilia Graf, our 400-year-old vampire protagonist, was born in 1604 in what is now Germany. She was quite high class, being the daughter of a count, but was married off at 19 to a husband who was quite cruel to her. A year after the marriage, when she was 20, she killed her husband. Her mysterious neighbour had become her only friend since being shipped away to live with her husband, and so Cecilia approached her, confessing the murder and asking for help. Her neighbour comforted her before she, without asking, bit her and turned her into a vampire. As Cecilia was battling the horrible sickness that comes with being turned into a vampire, her neighbour cared for her and, unknown to Cecilia, fed her husband piece by piece. When Cecilia had recovered and was fully reborn as a vampire, her neighbour took her abroad and schooled her in her new identity. Unfortunately, because Cecilia had eaten her husband, she took on his memories and soul, and he continued to haunt her until the events of the story, in which he becomes a more powerful, vengeful spirit and acts as the main antagonist. Speaking of the events of the story, by 2010 Cecilia has become a very reserved, independent and confident person. She loves to learn, collecting countless degrees. She's extremely intelligent, and while she is proud of that intelligence, she never boasts about it, often surprising people when her knowledge of a topic becomes relevant. The story kicks off when she meets our second character, Carmen White. Carmen White is an awkward, cringy, Twilight-obsessed 15-year-old edgelord. She's an outcast in school and gets on most people's nerves. When there's a series of murders in town, Carmen suspects that there's a vampire around and is eventually able to track down Cecilia, who recently moved to town. Obsessed with vampires and believing that becoming one will solve all of her problems and give her the power to do whatever she wants, she goes to see Cecilia and begs her to turn her into a vampire. Cecilia refuses. She sees it as irresponsible. She hasn't turned anyone in over a century and especially won't be cursing a child with agelessness. But Carmen uses a silver crucifix coated in garlic butter to essentially torture Cecilia until she snaps and bites her. Carmen transforms into a vampire, and after recovering from the process, she almost immediately murders her stepdad and a girl who bullies her at school. Cecilia wants absolutely nothing to do with her, but notices her reckless behavior and realizes that the consequences will end up bouncing back on her. Reluctantly, she takes on a mentor/parental role, feeling a responsibility towards this child who she finds absolutely insufferable. Carmen has a borderline obsessive crush on a boy in her class. Sean, her crush, is popular, good-looking, and a genuinely good and kind person. He also happens to look a little bit like Edward from Twilight. Carmen thinks that being a vampire, she'll be able to impress him enough to get him to date her. When he's still not interested, however, she resorts to Plan B, tying him up while she tries to figure out if she has any hypnotizing powers as a vampire. Cecilia steps in, absolutely furious about the situation. After a good amount of arguing about Sean's fate, while he watches from his chair, they decide to turn him into Cecilia's familiar so that he can't go to the police about them. These three form the core crew of the story, a strange, dysfunctional found family who eventually have to work together to keep out of trouble and somehow take down Augustin, the vengeful ghost of Cecilia's husband. So, there's all my characters. Well, all the ones with recent art at least. If any of these interest you, then feel free to follow the link in the description and check out my profile and bookmark your favourite. Also, if you'd like to potentially get an attack from me, or someone watching, tell me about your favourite OC in the comments and drop their Artfight character ID so I can find them. Again, no promises regarding attacks, but I'd love to check them out either way. Also, let me know what team you're on, and what you think about there being 3 teams. I think it's super exciting, and I can't wait to see how the competition plays out. Though, if you're on Team Tragedy or Mystery, you should probably just give up now, because comedy is taking it home, I'm afraid. I'll probably make some more videos on the attacks I do during Artfight, so subscribe if you'd like to see those. But otherwise, I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you so much for watching.